Good evening. Thank you all for being here this evening. I'm Tom Eddington, CEO and co-founder of FutureShapers. I'd like to thank you for being here and joining us this evening. I'd like to thank the folks at the Gladstone Institutes for hosting us this evening. And I'd like to start off by just talking a little bit about FutureShapers. FutureShapers is an organization focused on bringing more conscious leadership into the world. We're doing that through a variety of means. Events like this evening, where we have an opportunity to bring in folks such as Chapman to talk about conscious leadership and individuals that we see who are embodying conscious leadership. We also have 3-day workshops. We do one-on-one coaching, and then we have a group we call roundtables, where we bring a dozen leaders together on a monthly basis over the course of the year to help them in their journey on becoming a more conscious leader. And the whole reason for us doing this work is that if we look at the state of the world, we look at the state of the systems, the organizations that have been built over the last several centuries, we have a world that's not working. We've got systems that are collapsing before our very eyes, whether it's our healthcare system, our government system, our education system. You pick a system and you tell me one that's man-made that's not broken, and many of our natural systems are breaking as well. And as one of our guests from a couple of months ago, Lynn Twist, talked about, there's a recognition that those systems were built at a time when the world was a much smaller population, when we were living in a mechanical age. And those systems were designed and built by humans, for humans, and served their purpose. And they did a wonderful job 50 years ago, 60 years ago, 30 years ago. But they've outlived their time. And it's time for us as leaders, conscious leaders, to hospice those old systems out of existence in a very loving, very compassionate, very caring way, and midwife the new systems into existence. And the way that that's going to happen is through conscious leadership. And that's why my co-founder, John Renesch, and I are doing this work. That's why we're hosting events like this evening, is to help spread the word, help bring more conscious leadership into the world. John is certainly one of the pioneers in the world of conscious leadership. He's written over a dozen books on the topic. He's been speaking about conscious leadership for 30 years plus, and is seen as a real pioneer in this arena. And so, John, I'll turn it over to you to introduce Diana and kick off the evening.
Great. Thank you, Tom. Thank you very much. And welcome again to all of you. Before I introduce Diana, I wanted to say one thing about leadership. I was asked in an interview recently about what I thought was the biggest crisis in the world, and they were expecting an answer like, global warming or nuclear accidents or terrorism, etc. And I said the biggest crisis in the world today is leadership. And most people that I talk to recognize that we aren't getting any better leadership today than we were 50 years ago, 100 years ago. And I think the reason for that is that we keep doing leadership development courses and workshops for people to become better leaders, but it's all coming in the head. There's no transformational quality about them. And we have all the information we need to learn how to lead. Now what we need is the courage to actually do it and embody it. But there's a lot of people interested, more so in the last 3 or 4 or 5 years than I can remember in the last 30 or 40 years. A lot of people are interested in talking about conscious leadership and reading about conscious leadership. A lot of people even in writing about conscious leadership. But I haven't seen a lot of evidence for people doing it, being a conscious leader. And the very first time I met Diana, I think it was in a coffee shop downtown, I got the hit that she's the real deal. And in our interactions since that time, she's proven that to me, that she is the real deal. She walks her talk. And that's why I'm so delighted to have her as a guest here at the Meet the Visionaries series. So when I met Diana, she and 2 partners were doing the Conscious Leadership Forum, it was called at that time, putting groups a group. They had one group they put together, and they had up to 30, I think when we first met, they had 30 people in it. And they've culled it from time to time. It's gone up and gone down and so forth. But they're doing something very similar to what we're doing with our roundtables. And one of the delights in meeting people like Diana is normal. In the old paradigm, I would see her as a competitor. Oh my God, she's a competitor. I don't want to promote her at all. But there's a commonality that I find with a lot of these new conscious leaders, that they're not looking at each other as competitors. They're looking at each other as allies.
As teammates. Teammates even, I would say.
Teammates, yeah, good. Because if we're going to change the world, we can't. It's not going to be one person changing the world. It's going to take a lot of us to do that. Now, she and her partners eventually they had a document that I became very fond of, a one-pager called the 15 Commitments to Conscious Leadership, and it was a very convenient one page. She said, "Fine, use it, print it out, use it in your trainings," which we do. And it's 15 commitments that a conscious leader would make, followed shortly by the commitment that most other people are making, the commitment to the darker side, you might say, or the less conscious side. And at some point in time, and I don't know the story, we'll get the story tonight, I hope, she and her partners decided to write a book about it called The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. And I'm surprised that nobody has a copy of it. She didn't bring a copy of it, but it's the 15 commitments in a black line of conscious leadership in the bottom. It's a black and white cover. It stands out on a bookshelf, and you can also get it online. But at any rate, they've been doing this now for how many years?
4 years.
4 years?
Since,
And the book's been out about
Just
less
a
than a
year.
year.
Yeah.
About a year? Okay. So with that, I know she's married. She's got a couple of kids. She lives in Santa Cruz. She has a husband. I want to ask you more about all of that. But I think the first thing I want to start with is, how did you, because we've never had this conversation, how did you get to this place of passion and commitment yourself?
It's a good story, actually. My brother-in-law was CEO of Monsanto back about 17 years ago. And yeah, but actually a very thoughtful man. He was deeply devoted to his own spiritual practices and to personal development. And he said, Diana, I've worked with the finest coaches in the world, both personally and professionally. And there is a couple that I think stand out amongst all of them, this couple, Gay and Katie Hendricks. And I'm going to gift you some money. You and your husband are going to give you $5,000. You can do whatever you want with this $5,000, but I would recommend that you go fly to California. I was living in Michigan at the time. And go take a 5-day training with them. So I was always up for a new adventure, so I said, sure, let's do it.
What were you doing at the time?
At the time, I was a community leader, involved very much in the schools and raising 2 kids.
Okay.
So I went to this training, and I was angry because I learned so much in those 5 days of how to be a conscious human being, more so than anything else I'd learned in my life. And I thought, why is this not out there? Why am I just getting this at 35 years old? And so right then and there, I decided I'm going to find a way to help make this material available to a lot more people. So that's how it began. Yeah.
Yeah, the Hendrickses, I've never met them. I certainly know of their work, and I'm not. But about the time I met you, I met a number of people that had worked with them, including Elizabeth Hunter, who you probably know.
Yes.
Because I think they started a foundation and they actually recruited Elizabeth to run it for them. So that's been going on too. I remember one time calling you or emailing you, asking if we could have a conversation about working together. Because I really liked you and I thought you'd be a great colleague and somehow merge our companies or something. And correct me if I have this wrong, but I think what you said is that you and your 2 partners decided you really liked to work together, and that was what you were doing.
Yes.
And you didn't want to basically mix it up with other people because you really wanted to work with the other 2 people.
We were just starting to birth the book and the ideas of the book, and we wanted to just see if we can get this up and going first. And then once we've got some legs, then we wanted to see about collaborating with other people. But we knew we needed to birth something on our own first.
But that communication from you, and every communication I've had from you, has been so clear and so conscious. I remember one time I emailed you and you didn't respond right away, and I finally nudged you again, which I do sometimes. And you came back and you said, if I can remember this, you said, I allowed myself to get distracted. Now, most people would say I was too busy, I'm sorry, you know. They'll still apologize, but they'd say I was too busy. She said I allowed myself to get too distracted, which I thought, wow, I like that. I'm going to use that. I have used that, by the way. So how did the gestation of the book get going?
Yeah, so we created a lot of documents and a lot of materials, and I had a mentor, a woman named Kate Ludeman, who I went to go visit her, and I took her all materials that we had created, and I said, what do you think? And she pulled out the 15 commitments document, and she said, this is a book. So that's how it got started, and we wrote the book very quickly. Actually, it just sort of was one of those great come-through-us experiences, and it's doing really well. We were so thrilled about the whole process, and yeah.
Is this the first book for you?
It is.
And your co-authors?
It's the first one for me. They've both written before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like having a baby.
It is.
Yeah.
It is like having a baby.
Yeah.
So
Well, congratulations.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So the theme for all of our series is, what does it take to be a conscious leader in today's world? So that's the general theme, the context. It isn't necessarily a question you have to address right away, but just want you to know that's the general contextual theme of all these.
Okay.
So the book, your life, being here, all of that is appropriate as long as it's within that context.
Okay.
So do you have something you just ready to burst right now that you want to say about that?
Well, I really think this idea of conscious leadership, I love these 4 questions that we've been sitting with that I think all conscious leaders are asking themselves. And the first question is, where am I? And what we mean by that is, where am I in relationship to presence? Am I in presence or have I left presence? And my experience is that hardly anybody ever asks themselves or each other that question of where are you? And we're always having these conversations with each other. Life is, I would argue, one big conversation, either with somebody else or in my own head. And this content is so fascinating, we all think. But the where is this conversation coming from? Is this coming from, and we like to use this model of the line, is it above the line, in an open, clear, trusting place, or is it below the line where there's some constriction, some defensiveness? So that's the first thing that I love talking to people about is, where are we? In this now moment, do you know where you are? And do you have the skill set to catch that? So I was watching myself when I was getting ready to start talking, sitting here on the stage. I was checking in with myself, and I was saying, Diana, where are you? And I noticed I was below the line. And so I just checked what's going on, and I could feel this place of nervousness. And I watched myself. I could feel it. It was in my body. It felt tight, a little tight. It felt anxious. And so first, the next question then is, so I could recognize I'm below the line. And the next question is, can I accept myself for being just where I am? And, especially for a lot of us who are seekers, who are interested in personal development, it's often, I should be someplace else. And I'm really excited about letting myself be exactly where I am and letting everybody else be exactly where they are. So I let myself just accept, I'm a little scared. I can notice this part of me that wants to be accepted and wants this to be valuable for you and for those who would watch this. And so I just let myself be in acceptance of that part of me that wants to control. And then the next question is, am I willing to shift? And the important thing about that question is no has to be just as valuable as yes. Because if no isn't okay, then you can't really truly have a whole body yes. And I'd argue that about anything. If I can't say no to walking into my job today, I can't really be there from my yes. So I checked to see, would I be willing to shift? And I said, yes, I'd be willing to shift. And then the final question is, how do I shift? And what I noticed is just checking to see if I'd be willing to be the source of my own approval and my own control and my own security. And I asked that question, and I said, yes, I would be. And I noticed the whole body relax. And I come back above the line, and I come back to presence. And so that process, where am I? Can I accept myself for being right where I am? Am I willing to shift if I am in a place of any kind of constriction? And then how will I shift? And that's the simple practice, that if we all were just spending time putting attention on that and learning to develop that skill, I think it would be a very different world we live in. So that's the big message I'm out there spreading, is those simple questions.
Okay. The above the line, below the line, I think most of our audience probably could use some explanation of
Sure.
that. So what I'm aware of is a number of people have come up with the 4 quadrants of progress, or the levels of conscious leadership. And several people have seen it, and I've seen it in different versions, but I think yours, the one you have in the book, is probably the best of all of them. But the way you don't do it as level 1, 2, 3, 4. You have it as a 4 quadrants.
Right.
So I'm wondering if you can explain that to our audience, so that they get where the line is that you're talking about, above and below the line.
Sure. Well, so the 4 quadrants, the first one is the quadrant of life is happening to me. And in life is happening to me, my well-being, or what's happening in here, is directly related to what's happening out there. So if what's happening out there is a problem, then I'm having a problem in here. And if what's happening is good, well, then I'm good. But I'm still at the effect of the scene out there. And so there'll be a lot of people who will say, oh, I'm really great today. But that's because the circumstances are great. And the challenge with that is there's always a little anxiety, because if any of those circumstances change, I'm going to have to change. So life is happening to me is one quadrant that's available to us.
That's a victim quadrant.
That's a victimhood quadrant. And my experience is about 95% of the population spends a good chunk of their time there. And there are a lot of goodies from being in there. And the identity certainly likes being there, because boy, oh boy, does the identity get to run the show in that quadrant. Then the next quadrant is life is happening by me. And in the world of by me, I start to recognize, oh, hey, wait a minute. I'm the source. I'm the source of my well-being. And those things could be happening out there, but that doesn't mean I have to be away from my own sense of well-being here. And so it's like being in the eye of a storm, to recognize I have that power. And I have the power also to create the circumstances of my life the way I'd like them to be. And what that really means is that I learn to take 100% responsibility for being the creator. So I move from victimhood to creator. Another quadrant we can all access is the quadrant of life is happening through me. And in life is happening through me, we start to get more interested in this bigger game going on outside of ourselves, and we start to ask, what is life's greatest expression that wants to move in and through me? And in this quadrant, we're listening. We're allowing ourselves to surrender to something bigger than ourselves. And in this quadrant, we're much more interested in the awe of life, and we're deeply, profoundly curious and really care a lot about being of service. It's about we, for sure, in this quadrant. And then finally, another quadrant we can spend time in is life is happening as me. And this quadrant is difficult to articulate, because to articulate it takes you away from it. But maybe you've had an experience being in a temple or a church, or in a beautiful place in nature, or holding a baby, or some place where everything is an experience of oneness. And it's not an intellectual experience, it's a whole being experience. And so the idea is that we can be in any of those quadrants at any time. In any of those quadrants, they all have their gifts and their challenges. We're not going to any one particular one. But those quadrants we learned from Michael Beckwith. He was the one who taught us about those quadrants, and we shifted them over to leadership. He was looking at them from a spiritual perspective. And so if you take the line, there's a line between to me and by me. We take that line and we just put that line up, and we just say, let's just play with that line, because we think if we can cross over that line, that's a big deal. So from above the line, the experience is presence. It's being the creator and beyond. And from below the line, it's being in victimhood. And so we spend a lot of time helping people learn how to know where am I, and know how to shift from below to above. So
your first 2 quadrants are like this, and then the third one's up here, and the fourth one's up here.
exactly.
So your shorthand for all that is, where are you today? Or am I above the line?
Am I
or
above the
below
line or below the line?
Yeah. So you have victimhood. To get out of victimhood, you have to let go of blame, right?
Yes. Let go of blame.
And to move into the third quadrant, you've got to let go of control.
Yes, it's a
Take
surrender
blame.
practice.
Yeah.
And it's a practice of non-attachment. It's about letting go of what I want, and I'm listening more to what wants to happen.
And then to move from the third quadrant to the fourth quadrant, you got to let go of
Seeing myself as a separate self from oneness.
the separateness there.
Yeah.
Yeah, the oneness.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's great. I love
Yeah.
it. I love it. How is it, within your forum group, you have people that can use that as shorthand? Is it work, do you use it with your YPO groups? Because I know you lead a lot of YPO groups.
We
as
do.
well.
So let's say you're working with your team or with.
Well, excuse me, does everybody know what YPO means? Anybody not know what, okay, it means, it started out years ago being the Young Presidents Association, and you had an organization, and you had to
Yes.
be a president of a company of a certain size and under a certain age, right?
Yes, you had to be between 35 and 50.
Okay.
And I think it's 30 to 50 now.
And then they started something for the
Now they have
older
WPO
folks.
for the older ones, yeah.
And then some years ago, they started a forum.
Yes.
Because otherwise, it was basically a support group kind of thing.
I think forums have been going on for quite some time.
Yeah, quite a while
Yeah.
now. But YPO was started a long time ago.
Yes.
And the forum has basically become the tail wagging the dog. The forums have gotten very popular. And they're
Yeah.
like your roundtables. Or
Yeah,
your
you know,
forums, right?
the argument is that people really learn in community, and that YPO is a community of leaders who come together, anywhere from 7 to probably 11 or 12 of them, and they meet on a monthly basis. And the idea is that it's a place to come where you're held sacredly by a group of people who you can reveal yourself very deeply and authentically to. And so in YPO, or in your groups or our groups, the idea is that you're going to have an issue. So we say, what's your issue? So you tell an issue, oh, I'm having a challenge with my teenager, or I'm thinking of firing my CFO, or whatever the issue is. And so you talk a little bit about the issue, and then the group asks, well, where are you in relationship to the issue? Are you above the line or are you below the line? And people are really good at bullshitting themselves. So a lot of people go, oh, I'm above the line. I'm really curious about this. I really am. And so the group, as loving groups do, we vote. And so we all go 1, 2, 3, and either up we believe you or down we don't. And so reliably, almost everybody gets voted down. And the group gives feedback about, here's why I voted you down, and the person immediately goes, I got it, I am below the line. So we start there. And so we go, great, you're below the line. Let's get into it a little more. So we do something where we have you get on the drama triangle, and we let you really bitch, moan, and complain about your issue. In fact, we say, go Jerry Springer. See if you can really, if you were on the Jerry Springer show. So you wouldn't believe my CFO. Here's why I got to fire him. And we let you really go at it for a couple of minutes. And then afterwards, after you've let it kind of move through you, because our experience is, ego so loves to be right. So let's let you be right for a minute, just to let it all flush through. And so then we ask, okay, now that you're on the drama triangle, can you accept yourself for being right here? And most people can, some people can't. And if you can't accept yourself, there's not really any place you can go. So we just say, if you can't accept yourself, can you accept yourself for not accepting yourself? And most people can do that. And we go, okay, just stay there for a little while. But for those who can't accept themselves, we say, great, you're here in the drama triangle. Are you willing to shift? And most people, of course, say, yes, of course I'm willing to shift. And so again, we're good at bullshitting ourselves. So we say, let's see if you're really willing to shift. And the group's role is to challenge you and to say, well, would you be willing to feel all your feelings about this issue? And would you be willing to speak authentically to all the people involved? Oh, well, you mean you want me to say that thing? Yeah, I don't know about that. So we go and check and we see, and we find out where the little places are that you might not be willing to come up above the line and move out of your victimhood. And our experience is that for repeating issues that have been happening in our lives, 80% of the time we're not willing to shift. So we think we want to shift.
We say we'll shift.
We say we really want to. And I say, yeah, I want to lose 15 pounds, but I'm not yet willing to lose 15 pounds. So I understand what that's like. And so we let it be okay that they're not yet willing, and they get information about what they're not willing to do. And the cool thing is you get to learn something about yourself regardless of whether you're willing, and we have more processes that people get to learn about themselves. And we're not, if you're really a conscious forum, the idea is that we don't need you to shift. There's no problem. You can be stuck. You can be in your issue. It's okay. And there's great goodies from being where you are, and we talk about that and celebrate all of those things. And so that's the great gift of being with a group of people who are practicing with you, is that you get reflection so that you don't skip over some big learning that you could have if you were on your own.
You know, you and I had a phone call about a month or two ago. And I think Tom was in on it too. We three of us had a phone call. And I think well, I won't go into what the purpose was originally, but you said something that it prompted an article out of me. You know what I'm about to say. But you mentioned that being a conscious leader is a lifestyle issue.
Yeah.
And for some reason, that came out in bold italics for me, out of that phone call. Because I think most people, including perhaps even myself, think of it as a shift into a new awareness, a new level of being, but not a lifestyle change. I mean, lifestyle change is like going into the clergy or getting married or deciding to have a child. You know, it's really big stuff.
Yeah.
But it is that.
It is, absolutely.
If you don't commit to being more conscious in everything you do, you
Right.
can't lead
Right.
in the way we're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the reason I'm on the stage is I got really good at going to the gym every day around conscious leadership. And I just practiced and practiced until I was embodying it. And that's when we go into organizations and we bring this in there, we say this isn't just a one-time training. It would be like going to a gym one time, everybody works up and we're a little pumped up and we all go, yeah, that was great. But then, you know, what? Then we're not just gonna drop it? So no, we gotta go to the gym every day. And so we leave organizations with daily practices that they do individually and with partners and in teams so that it becomes part of their way they live.
It's kind of like joining a gym and deciding you're going to lose weight because you joined a gym. You have a card.
Right, right. I mean it, I do. Look at this. Yeah.
I'm curious how you integrate your life as a mother, you're a farmer as well, right?
Yes.
You and your husband have a farm in Santa Cruz, with all the other work you're doing. Because I know you must travel a fair amount.
I do. I travel.
How do you
I
integrate
travel a
all of
lot.
that
Well,
and stay so conscious?
I keep my life pretty simple. So I do my work. Gardening is my meditation. It's my place to come home to. And I have a select group of friends that I spend time with. But life is simple. So this year I traveled a lot. My garden is reflective of that if you went there and you'd see. I'm really clear now that I live under no obligation. So I don't do anything that I don't really, really want to do. And that cuts a lot of things out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then I'm left with just the things that bring me the most joy.
Well, I'm glad saying yes to this invitation tonight. It was one of those things you said yes to. I'm appreciative of that. Yeah, and I know that about you. I know not to ask you something light,
Yeah.
because you're the real deal. Yeah.
I'm working on it.
No, yeah, well, you have to work on it.
You do.
That's the name of the game, is to
Yeah.
be working on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what question would you like me to ask you next?
Oh, that's great. You can ask me, like, what commitments do I have the most challenge with?
Okay.
Or where do I get stuck below the line?
Okay.
Yeah.
Consider it asked.
Okay. I don't know. Let me look. I can get caught in gossip. I can start to speak about somebody in a way that I haven't spoken directly to them or wouldn't say what I'm saying if they were in the room. That's a place I get caught sometimes. I feel sad when I catch myself there. And I'm doing my work is to catch it, pick up the phone and call and clear it up. And to also not listen to gossip. So that's a place I can slip sometimes. And it's a big practice for me right now. I also notice it can be difficult sometimes to really feel my, like the most tender emotions, like the most hurtful ones with another person. I was actually driving here, and I was talking to a colleague, and we were getting ready to hang up, and I said, I notice I feel sad, and I don't I don't have any clarity about it, but I didn't feel in my full presence as I was hanging up, and I just let it be. I didn't need to know why, and he said, I feel sad too, and then we just sat with each other for a minute, and then it came to me that we had an opportunity to work together, and he had gone to pick somebody else, and I realized that I had been hurt, and I had not said it, or known it, or felt it, and so I said, oh, it's this hurt. I feel some hurt. And I let myself drop in and really not just talk about it, but be with it, feel it, let the wave come through. And as I did, I noticed immediately this like rush of aliveness come back on. And I said, oh, that's what it was. So I just didn't know I had this hurt in here. And he was so grateful, and we both said, wow, we felt closer, and we talked about how could we create some time to collaborate together, and hung up. Just it felt wonderful. And so that's an ongoing practice for me, is to catch anything where I can feel I'm not really feeling cozy and connected with another person. There's often a little something in here that wants to be felt. Yeah.
On the gossip side, I've had this experience in the last, off and on the last several years, of oneness being something beyond just a concept. I've actually had the sense of we are all one. And I'm also aware that it's so easy to get into what I call gossip, which is not just talking about somebody that's not in the conversation, but talking about the news, talking about anything that's going on in the world, as if they are a separate thing than we.
Right.
I call them they conversations versus we conversations.
Right.
And I have a group of colleagues that we meet every month, and I have been in the process of trying to asking them if we could refrain from these kinds of conversations, because it's so impulsive. If you just, let's say, if I just said Donald Trump right now, half the room would probably ding, go over there. And if you're in a conversation and say something about Donald Trump, somebody will have something to say,
right.
And suddenly the whole conversation becomes one of gossip, in my view.
Yeah.
But it pulls us out of the oneness into separateness. So it makes Donald Trump and whoever else is mentioned as a they, but that's not me. I'm over here having this opinion about that.
Right.
So that's a challenge for me. I asked you about you asked you about your challenges.
Yeah.
So I'm sharing that with me. That's my biggest challenge right now.
Is
how to articulate that in a way that people understand it, and then they can say, yes, I want to go with you on that, or no, I don't. But right now, I just feel like it's not landing.
right. Right.
And it's in our culture.
Right.
It's what we do in our culture. So it's kind of like saying I don't want to be in the water, but that's all I have. That's the only choice I have, is being in the water.
One of our commitments is I commit to seeing that everyone in every situation is an ally. And so I think about what you're saying of, how is, when people start to have these conversations, they often are dropping it, like Donald Trump's not my ally, Donald Trump is my impediment to creating the world we really want. And so I imagine just asking people that question of, I wonder how he's our ally and all this is our ally.
Or ISIS, or,
Yeah, exactly. How is ISIS our ally?
Out there, yeah.
Yeah, because from above the line, everything that's here is opening us to learn something about who we really are. And there is no problem from above the line. There are just simply opportunities to learn and grow. And we're just more interested in learning than we are being right about whether Donald Trump's a jerk or whether ISIS is good or bad. Or we're much more interested in what's the mirror and how am I just like that? And what is that an invitation for me to shift over here? And what's unloved over there that's begging to be loved? And so
The other piece of as you move from quadrant to quadrant, is that we can be in all four quadrants in one day. Right?
in 1 minute.
In 1 minute, yeah. And in different arenas of our life.
Yeah, absolutely.
We can be in the third or fourth quadrant above the line in some areas, and then we're down here and when it comes to something else entirely.
Yeah, right. We have mindfulness groups who've been contacting us lately saying, our clients say that life is really great when they're on the cushion or they're on the mat, and that through me space or as me space is very easily accessible. But they say that as soon as they jump back into the meeting room with their colleagues, they're back into life is happening to me, and they don't know how to get out of that. And so we say that, of course, that makes sense. And so different areas of our lives, it's easier, especially based on how much it feels like it's a threat to our identity.
Identity, there's a big one, right?
Yeah.
Which is ego, right?
Yeah.
It's what we associate as part of us, whether it's how we look or what we wrote or what we wear, where I'm from, what my position is.
Do you like me? I'm special.
Yeah, all of that.
Yeah. Yeah, and thank God for identities and thank God for egos because they're fun. First of all, it's fun to play this character, Diana. She's a different character than any other character out there. And this character has great gifts and this character has some challenges. And so identities are great to experience reality from. And egos are fantastic because they keep us alive. They want us to stick around. And so we want our egos. And so it's like, how do we have fun with all of that versus being at the effect of it all? And I like playing with my ego, I like to think of it like the road runner and the Wile E. Coyote. My ego is the Wile E. Coyote that always wants to drop the rock on me. It's always wanting me to be scared about something. It's always trying to, show me a potential threat to my well-being. And that it's never going to stop. I really get that. That's its job. Its job is to keep dropping the rocks. And my job is to know it's going to drop the rocks, to not make it wrong that it's dropping the rocks, and to look forward to the rocks, look forward to the game, and to see if I can zip around and miss the rock. And I'm learning to navigate that more and more. And so inside of myself, you often hear myself go beep, beep, like the Roadrunner does of, I got that one, I did it. And every once in a while, I'm splat underneath a big rock and going, well done, you got me good. And let me see if next time I can be a little more aware. And I think that's, conscious leadership it's playful. It's not, when people get caught up in, we got to be serious now, we got to get aware, we got to get, personal development. I find that play, for me, is one of the great tools of personal development. And so I love to play with all of this stuff and have fun with it. And, we have what we call persona parties that we do at our trainings. And if you came to our persona party, we had one in December, we had 18 leaders came in, and I have this huge array of costumes. So throughout the first couple of days, I am listening for things about them that I see that they, an aspect of them that maybe they would never let out, like I would never be that way, or something they have a lot of shame about. And so I support them in finding a persona, a character inside of themselves that would like some attention, be able to come out a little bit more. And usually I know when I've got the right, I hit the nail on the head as they go, oh no, I don't want to do that one. And so then we'd have them dress up in costume and they come to dinner as this character. And we have them really play out whatever this is that they make so wrong about others or themselves. And it's really cathartic. We do a little process afterwards and say, how was that for you? And there was one woman in particular, she came to the training and she was very much the whole time, she was like this. And so I said, you're gonna come to the persona party as the most vivacious, take up the stage character that you can possibly imagine. She's like, oh no, I could never do that. I said, oh, you gotta do it. So she came as this diva. She had all these feathers on her, and she walks in and she says, I'm in the room, and everybody cheered. And we had her stepping up on the tables and everybody was applauding her. And she came in the next day to the training. It was like a different person. She was, at the end, wept with gratitude for, thank you for seeing this part of me that I have not been willing to love and value, and I like me better with this part of myself online. And presence really is about recognizing that whatever is out there lives in here. And to the extent that we, around any of it, we can't really fully be here and be part of the oneness. And so persona play in general is one of my favorite things to do. Yeah.
One thing I'd like to ask towards the end, but I think I want to ask it to you now, is if you were going back to, are you going back to Santa Cruz tonight?
I am.
So you're that's a long drive. So you're about to San Mateo, and you go, damn, I wish John had asked me that. Is there something that comes up that you wish you had said? No?
No.
Okay. Well, we'll open up to questions. Maybe something will come up there.
Okay.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Paula. Hi, Diana.
Hi,
I'm a
Paula.
follower and a reader of the book, voracious reader of the book. You talked about your own challenge with some of the commitments. What have you found in working with people that is just general resistance to the whole movement to above the line? Or have you seen some themes or the difficulty in even coming into the concept?
That's a great question. And we were talking about it actually before the talk, that what I'm noticing is the resistance is falling away. And that wherever I go, people are recognizing this difference. They can, they know, oh yeah, below the line, my heart's a little closed, my mind's a little closed, my body's a little closed. I can feel that. I get the cost of that. And so, yeah, I like it when it's up there. And I get we're more creative up there. We're more connected. We have more energy. We can respond versus react. And so far, this last year has been nothing but doors flying open with acknowledging it. The business world in particular really gets that presence is the new, it's the new game in town for success. And so, there's this idea of emerging complexity coming online that you're going to, as a business leader, there are going to be things that show up that you can never predict, no matter how smart you are in your business. And there are both opportunities and challenges. And it's the present people who are going to be able to navigate those worlds. And that's just people seem really accepting of that. That does feel like our experience. Yeah.
Have you used the EFT practice at all with your clients?
No,
Yeah. Are you familiar with it?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
EFT it stands for Emotional Freedom Technique. It's if you go to EFTuniverse.com, you'll see explanations of it. But it's a tapping technique that changes gene expression, reduces stress, anxiety very quickly, and in many cases permanently, very quickly.
EFT.
EFTuniverse.com.
Yeah. Nelson?
Good evening. I know nothing about what you're talking about. I'm intrigued when you said it was a lifestyle change. So I want to ask, does meditation enter into it? And do you have a meditation practice? And can you share how that helps you along as a conscious person?
Yes. So yes, meditation is part of it. In fact, we ask that when we go into organizations, meditation be a part of the program and that the organization make it part of the job description to meditate for all of their employees. And so we highly recommend everybody do 10 to 20 minutes a day, which is my practice. And I think it was very helpful for myself to learn how to come in and quiet the mind so I could be aware and look around and see what's going on in here and be able to get my witness turned on. That's been hugely valuable for me. One of my favorite meditations that I do actually is when I do a meditation where I let the garden lead me into what wants to happen in this garden and become very quiet and let my mind still and just move and care for things from a listening place. That's deeply, profoundly delightful for me. I also, there's a walking meditation I really like where my husband walks with me and I close my eyes and I listen just for sounds. And I name the sound bird, car, tree. And I just do that on an ongoing basis for about 20 minutes, keeping my eyes closed. And I love where I go in that meditation. But I like variety. I like trying different kinds of meditations and different ways of meditating because I have a lot of clients who don't like sitting and doing a simple sitting meditation. It's just not their style. So I like trying on lots of different things so I know what I think they might like. Yeah.
Great.
I work with a lot of leaders in my organization, and one of the challenges I face is when they ask for feedback, and I've committed to myself, if someone asks me for feedback and I have it, I give it. I'm curious, given what you know about conscious leadership and your experience, given that I probably won't change that commitment, are there things I can do or we can do to give that feedback in a way that, because sometimes it backfires.
Right.
And I'm curious if there are things to watch out for or things to pay attention to in that kind of scenario.
Well, two things. One is always to check for myself. I'm going to ask myself, where is this feedback in me? Where am I as I'm delivering the feedback? Is there any part of me below the line? Because if there's any part of me below the line, likely I'm going to get some reverberation over there in how it lands. So is there any part of me that wants to be right about my feedback? Have I really let myself see that the opposite of my feedback is at least as true? Am I in my own deeply curious place so that I'm a space that represents deep curiosity as I give feedback? So that's one thing. And then secondly, where are they? Because if they're not above the line asking for feedback, then they're going to be a victim to your feedback. And they're going to be at the effect of that in some way. And so I'm always thoughtful to ask a few questions to find out where they are. Because otherwise, in my opinion, I'm giving gold away with my feedback. And if you're below the line, it's like putting pearls before swine, we say. It's not going to really give you anything transformational. And so to say, hey, a story I might have is that you're not really open or curious right now for the feedback, and I would rather give it to you when you're in that place. Yeah.
Up here?
So, hi, Diana.
Hi.
I'm interested in seeing the world as not as a problem to be solved, but as just is. So I was wondering, I know when you said you approach things from the level of an issue, which sounds to me like a problem. Yeah. And so I'm wondering, do you have a way that you kind of transition into seeing the world as just is? Do you understand the question? Yes.
Yeah. So when I say people bring up issues, I put the quotations on it because it's not an issue for me. It's a problem. And my mindset is that everything is just here, and it's difficult sometimes for me to see anything other than it just is. But the identities out there want, it to be a problem. And so we play with that. We go, let's make it be a problem first. And then once we get curious, once we let them have their problem, go really deeply into it, then there's often some laughter that starts to come as we exaggerate, and then some isness starts to become more available. Is that what you're asking? Yeah. Yeah.
Diana, do you have, the reason I'm asking this is because it's happened to me on occasion, is when somebody is so into their problem or their challenge, and you don't see it quite that way, they actually get upset.
Oh, sure. I'm famous for people being upset with me. Yeah, I have this great laugh I do often with people. I often have to, close. I think that in and of itself, it both upsets people and in some way relaxes people at the same time, because some part of them can hear the giggle too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't mind providing a little provocative energy about that. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Shishir. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. So I'm new to this. First time hearing about this, and I'm fascinated by the 4 quadrants that you talk about.
Yes.
And especially the 4th one, the way you described it, is a very spiritual state of being.
Yes.
And to the few times I believe I have been in that quadrant have been. It's not driven by anything I've done, I just happen to be there.
Yes.
In your experience, as you're more aware of this, have you been able to get to that quadrant more often?
Yes.
By doing things or by practicing certain things?
Yes, one of my fastest ways I get there is I sit and be without my name. So I just I'm just the one without my name, so I let myself, that can get me there so fast. That's my shortcut. I learned that from Byron Katie. She is a woman who is a great teacher, and I brought a group of CEOs to come hang out with her for a few days, and she said, what is your name? And I said, my name's Diana. And she said, is that true? I said, well, I think it's true. She said, can you absolutely know for sure it's true? No. She said, somebody showed you a document or a birth certificate or called you Diana, but we don't know if it's for sure true. She said, what's it like when you believe that's your name? I said, well, part of it's kind of comforting. I can feel, it feels kind of cozy, but I also can feel it's a little bit of a cage. It's like I only get to be in this part. So she said, what if we just took out your name? Who would you be now if you don't have that name? And and it was wonderful, just so easy to go into oneness. So that's a reliable way. I just go sit for a moment without my name. Yeah.
So I have two quick questions.
Yes.
The first is describe your experience of being a conscious leader parent. So I'm a parent of two young kids, and so how does that play? And the second question is, of all the clients that you've worked with, can you describe a particular engagement over a period of time that you're most proud of?
Oh, great questions. Okay. So conscious leadership as parent is probably the place where I have been at my knees the most. And it's about continuously getting unattached to that young person's path and recognizing it's none of my business over and over again. And that my business is to do what I am meant to do, which is to provide, I think, two things. So that's how I like to think of it as a conscious leader. I like to think of it that what I'm two things. One is I'm a tour guide. So you stepped into this reality, and my job is to help give you a tour. So what's that? Well, that's a tree. What's that? So I start just touring you around, and then I start teaching you things like people are gonna, if you want something, if you say please and thank you, these kinds of things. I'm just giving you the lay of the land. So that's one of my primary jobs, is to do that so that then you can be most effective in moving around yourself. And then the second thing is that I think of myself then as the Jedi Master who has my Padawan, and there are certain skill sets that are mine to deliver to you so that you can be present here in this reality. And so I teach you those practices. And there are a lot of the commitments. And, I help you. I see it looks like you're having a little feeling. I see my son, his cheek is quivering, and it looks like you might feel sad. I'm a little bit, and I support learning how to feel that through and talk about the value and what's the intelligence of your sadness. And so I give those skill sets. And then that's a lot of what I'm up to. And then I trust you. I trust you to do what you're going to do. And does that answer that question? And then for one of my favorite clients, I really like the work I did at Hope Lab. It's a small startup here in the Valley. And Hope Lab was led by, at the time, Pat Kristen, who's very courageous. I find that I really like working with the most courageous leaders, the ones who are willing to let things maybe get a little messy in their culture as they're practicing this stuff. But I liked how much they embraced it, first of all, and how they took it and iterated on it and made it, they made it part of their culture and their practice. And that was so fun. It's fun when you have a leader who says, let's bring this all the way in and let's all play. And it's faster, and the results I saw there of the connections, it was already a lovely culture, but they really took it to another level. I would say any place where there's a leader who has the courage to stand for bringing this all the way in and being willing to let good people who say, I don't want to play, who I like being below the line, to let it be okay that you can go. And that's courageous. So those are my favorite clients.
Question. If I'm understanding this correctly. You're saying this conscious process is kind of a radical acceptance by detachment? And in that context, how do you form and frame commitments to people, goals, anything?
Great question. So not detachment. So I'm definitely not suggesting that we just detach, because I'm interested in what matters to you, but what matters to you from above the line, from trust, from real trust. What do you want versus from fear? So my experience is a lot of us are creating from fear. I've got to do this because if I don't, bad things are going to happen. So if we can step away from that and come into trust, there's a new motivation that would drive us. That's still very creative, that still cares about goals, that still is very active and could actually want to work at a very fast pace and deal with a lot of things going on, but it does it from a place of trust that is still very much cares what we're creating, but also is not trying to control. So it's a fine line to say, I want this, and I want us to go this way, and I'm not going to do this as we're going this way. It matters to me, I want it, but I'm not going to, life isn't going to be over if we don't get there. Does that make sense? Is that answering your question? Not quite?
So basically, you're trying to balance those two kind of, in one way to put it, if I understand it correctly, is you're trying to balance the opposing requirements of needing to desire the thing strongly enough to go for it, but also not so much that you choke off its ability to exist.
Exactly. Above the line is a yes and reality. So yes, we want this. We want to go here, and we'll do everything we can to get there. And if we don't, we'll learn from it, we'll accept it, and we'll find new things to do. So it's always holding those polarities, whereas down below the line, it's an either or.
Hi, Diana.
Hi.
A couple of questions ago, when you were talking about Hope Lab, you said it's great to work with leaders that take that kind of courage. The question that brought up for me was, can the consciousness in an organization ever exceed that of its leader?
It's a great question. I don't think so. I haven't seen it yet. I think that the leader's consciousness has I've never seen. I mean, the culture reflects the leader's consciousness. So to the extent that the leader, I mean, there are individuals who I do see. The individuals can go beyond the consciousness of their leader, but as a culture, I see that. It's a match. Yeah.
Well, how would you describe the difference of using the commitments and being used by them? And when do you know that that's happening in your work?
That's a great question. So if I make it like the law, and there's the right way, because I can go use the commitments from below the line, which a lot of people could do. It's like, using any religion. A lot of people use religion from below the line, right? And so then it becomes just another religion, another dogma, and then it's got me. Or I can use it from above the line, where I recognize this is just a set of principles that somebody made up. It's not right. I mean, I'd argue none of those do I believe are right or the right way. It's a structure that seems to work for me. I like it, and so I keep it. And at some point, maybe I decide, I don't know. I mean, that's one of my big fears is, what if I come out with like the 15 commitments, and then sometime down the road I go, that was stupid.
I guarantee you will.
And so there's this fear, and that was something I had to go through. If I had to be willing to say, let's put something out there and say yes, and then be willing to have the whole thing be, dismissed at some point for some other new possibility. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Greg. First, I wanted to thank this gentleman for bringing up about parenting.
Yes.
I'm here with my son tonight. Now, I didn't want to go there, so I'm glad somebody else did, and thanks for the advice. When you were talking about am I willing to shift and how do I shift, I think those are so closely intertwined, because I've always found I'm never willing to do anything until I get in so much pain that
Right.
I have to do it.
Right.
I've heard to comfort we make promises, and pain we obey, and I found that willingness is closely linked with pain, which I'm not. I don't like that.
Well, I would say
but
pain is a great ally to support willingness, but not required.
Well, that leads me to my question, because I often know how to make the shift. You brought up the example of going to, I need to lose 15 pounds. I go to the gym, I eat less, and I'll probably lose 15 pounds. And so I know how to do it, but have you found a way of getting to the point of doing that without the pain? How do you make that shift without going through the pain?
Yeah, how do you make the shift without going through the pain? Well, you have to be a real lover of pain. I love pain. I love my pain. I love your pain. I love pain. Pain to me as a gardener, pain is like the soil that drops on the seed that allows it to crack open. And so it's a ingredient that provides some pressure. And so the key thing, though, it's important to note is that when I'm below the line, the reason why I'm not willing to go up above that line is because there's something that I don't know, and it scares me. I don't know what's up there. If I did know, I could be up there. And so a lot of people say, well, just Diana, tell me what I need to do to get up above, or to be up there, and then I'll do it. And I say, I don't know. We have to get up there first and then look around and discover. And that's a courageous act. Most human beings, the pain that comes is a lot of fear of not knowing. The ego doesn't like to not know. That's a threat to it. So, we say, most everybody's asking to, can you show me the movie and then maybe I'll buy the ticket, right? And so we say, well, you got to buy the ticket and then go see the movie and learn. And that's the way it is. And to the extent that we're not willing to do that, pain comes along and pushes on us, and finally we go, all right, I'll buy the ticket. I had a guy recently as a CEO, and he said, I don't really want to be in this company anymore. It was his company he had founded. I don't really want to go be here anymore, but I don't want to leave my people. And I knew he was ready to go. He'd been ready to go for quite some time. I said, it's your time to go. And he said, I don't want to feel that pain of saying goodbye to everybody. I said, okay, well, it's likely going to get worse. And I really encouraged him to do the work because I knew that what was going to come his way was likely not going to be nearly as friendly as just having to say goodbye. And one day he called and said, I've been fired by my board of directors. And I've lost my role, and I'm not allowed to speak to anybody now in my company. And that was his unconscious way to navigate through his pain, was to get himself fired. And, I see that happens a lot. I can always feel it in my body when it comes, so I just give him a warning sign. It's going to come. So human beings, though, most of us, that we wait until the pain gets a little stronger. The other option, though, is a vision. And the other option to move into that unknown is to get so turned on by something that ignites you so much that you're willing to step through fires to go make it happen. And that's another possibility for how human beings can create change. And that's just less popular for us, but it's certainly always possible.
It occurs to me that pain above the line is pressure.
Exactly.
Below the line, it's suffering.
Suffering, yes.
I mean, I just got that.
Yes.
I don't know if that's in your book or not.
Yes.
But if you're not attached, pain is just pain. I remember learning that, getting Rolfed years ago. Anybody here been Rolfed? No, I saw 3 or 4 hands. Anybody here been Rolfed a second time? But I learned then that when you're feeling that pressure, when they're pressing on the fascia in your skeletal somewhere, you have a choice of how to feel that pressure. And if you take it as pain, it's instantly screaming and getting out of here and slugging the Rolfer and all that sort of thing. Whereas if you just accept it as pressure, it doesn't hurt.
Yes.
You don't feel like you have to defend yourself.
Yes.
It occurred to me, we have a guest coming up in May who was fired by his board of directors very publicly, the Men's Warehouse founder, George Zimmer. So it should be interesting to hear what he has to say about that come June.
I see it's a lot of mushy-hearted leaders, who often are having trouble saying goodbye that require firing. Yeah.
Anybody else over here?
Let's get her first, because you haven't asked one. Yeah. Hi, Diana.
Hi.
My question leads to what you were just describing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Hold the
wondering if you could
microphone
talk
a little
about the
closer.
could you talk about the timing that you see some of your clients go through in terms of if you're training a company and you see people who are willing to go above the line, and maybe you see some of the leaders willing to go, what kind of timings have you seen? Have you seen it happen quickly? Is it taking a year, 2 years?
Yeah, I would say everybody's different. A lot of it has to do with how willing are you to really sit with the cost and feel the cost of not shifting. Because what I notice is that so many of us numb ourselves to the cost with our devices and our glass of wine and our whatever else that we do that keep us not having to face that cost. So one of my real gifts is to help say, okay, no problem being below the line, but can you really feel this cost? And can you stop distracting yourself with your compulsive behaviors so that you can be with it? Because once you can be with those costs, that's often the pain that then shoots you to start to take a shift above the line.
Okay.
So everybody's different. Everybody's different even with their own life. Some people can shift really fast around one issue, but another issue is they're going to hang on to that one for a lot longer. And it's such a melting pot of different possibilities.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a spiritual practice, I call it metaphysics, and it's also truth or New Age. It sounds like a lot of your version of conscious leadership has to do with getting to know yourself
Yes.
and your place in the totality. So I find it a little bit surprising to come here tonight and to hear the thoughts and the practices that you're doing. I didn't have any idea that that would enter into the business world and conscious leadership.
Yes. One of my favorite spiritual practices in the morning is this. Just can I just love this one? Can I learn to accept this just the way it is? Accept me and all these parts that are reflected out there. And can I acknowledge they're here and see when they're here and catch them when they want to react versus take a breath and can we settle back in and what's going on in here? And so a lot of conscious leadership is about learning to see all these parts, accept all these parts, celebrate these parts, figure out every one of them has great value, when can they get used, and not just mine, but in yours. And so if we're colleagues and you get huffy because I was late on a deadline and you're really upset and you're yelling at me and perhaps even attacking me, if I have that awareness to recognize that you're scared and there's just a little guy in there that's scared and there's a little one in here who's scared and we're having, we're in here, and if I can catch all that, then I can respond and I can take responsibility and I can help shift the scene from this to this. And that's the practice. Yeah.
Being centered.
Being centered, being playful, being honest, being authentic, being human, like letting it be so okay to be human. I think humans we spend so much time trying not to be human. And wishing you weren't human. Like, stop being human. It looks like the whole world's just going, stop being human, stop being human. No, we're human. Just, can we just have some fun with that? Yeah.
There's a microphone. There we are.
Yeah, I have one more. Can you talk a little bit about the relationship between moving from below the line to above the line and the loss associated, fear of losing something by moving? Because in full disclosure, I've worked with Diana, and I remember specifically realizing the bar of moving and realizing that's so scary to move because I thought I'd be losing something. So if
Yeah.
you could talk about that.
Well, the big loss is, when I'm below the line, I'm Diana. Diana is this, and this is Diana's value, and this is me. And when I go above the line, all of that drops away. This part of it drops away. And then it's like, well, who will I be if I'm not that? And for most of us, that's just such a threat. Like, I won't know myself. I won't know where my value comes from. I remember my husband And I made an agreement. He was the breadwinner for many years, and we agreed that we would switch roles. So he said, okay, if you can make this much money per month, 3 months in a row, I'll quit my job and we'll trade. And I did it. And I remember coming home and finding him dry heaving in the toilet and going, who am I if I'm not the breadwinner? If I'm not caring for you, where's my value coming from? It was really terrifying for him to go through that journey. And so I'm deeply respectful of the cost that happens for all of us, and that's why I've learned, don't ever push. It is never okay to push on somebody to go above the line, because, and that's one of the things when I come in and talk to groups with, I'm like, because people are like, come on, you can do it. And I said, don't push. You have no idea what's at risk underneath some of these issues for people. Yeah.
Yeah, some of the other things to give up is you don't get to blame anybody anymore.
Right, you have to take responsibility.
You take responsibility, but it's nice having scapegoats. We do that with our elected officials all the time. And the other thing is to give up being in charge.
Mm-hmm. That's a
That
good
you're
one.
in total control of everything. There's nothing beyond you.
Yeah.
You know, that power greater than yourself, that doesn't exist there, because you're the power. Yes, ma'am.
I want to take this to the meta level. I feel a little bit like a Miss America contestant right now, wanting to talk about world peace. And what's your experience in terms of what you see as ultimately the capacity for human beings to reach a higher level of consciousness and sustain it? Being a child of the 60s, a lot of us spent a lot of time meditating and still do, and we were going to change the world and we were going to see world peace. And now we see, as little world peace as there was then, and exciting new forms of it, like ISIS. What do you see as the evolutionary process? Are you clearly hopeful about it because it's the work that you do? And I'm there with you.
Yeah.
I enjoy the same kind of work. But sometimes I look around and I think, is the human designed to do this? And can we reach it on a global level? And if we do, then what? My husband's fond of saying, no conflict, no drama. And so it's, what do you see?
Well, I don't know. That's my honest answer. I don't know. What I know is that for those of us who want, it's like I think of it more like a playground. Like there's this playground available where if we start to let go of drama, what's available next is something that allows us to get highly creative, where we get to start to play with our imaginations and build and create things, and that could be really fun, but it would have to be deeply on purpose for all of us. So because purpose, and it's got to be playful, because that's the only thing I know that trumps drama, is play and purpose. So, but we could have a lot of fun playing and having purpose without the drama. And can a whole group of us, can the whole of us do that? I don't know. But I know that some of us can, and that it's valuable. I like it, it's fun. So it's really just saying, for me, at least all I can do is say, hey, I found a playground that seems to be really working for me and others when to come play. And we'll just find out where it goes from there. Yeah.
I want to give Diana a little bit of a break, but your question prompted me to think of this. There's a saying by a man named Howard Thurman, which is one of my favorite quotes, which is, do not look for what the world needs. Look for what makes you come alive. For what the world needs is for you to come alive. Years ago, I was in the book publishing business, and when I got out of it, I realized that I was doing what I was doing, trying to transform, fix, or save the world. One friend of mine referred to it. And I realized that I'd been doing that for a good 10 years in a state of martyr, which is a little more slick version of victim.
Yeah.
And it's where a lot of people are in trying to bring about transformational change. A lot of people are in that martyr mode. And what I had to look at myself is, what would I be doing if I wasn't doing this? And now I feel like I'm just doing what I choose to do. If I had every job in the world to pick from, I would pick the job I'm doing, meaning I'm doing what I feel called to do and what I'm enjoying doing, what I love doing, as opposed to doing it because I have to save the world. It's a very different place to come from.
Right, and to the point out here, it's like, I don't have to change anything. It's okay if it stays just the way it is.
I'm going to be doing my job anyway.
Right.
Now, I happen to have a core belief that human beings could be doing a lot better than they're doing as far as getting along with each other and with the planet. But that's just, but it's not live or die that they have to change. I have a preference, and that's what the side of the field I'm working.
To be honest, I'm doing this for selfish reasons. I just want more playmates. I want to play with people who want to be authentic and who want to be creative and who want to be in their zones of genius and support each other in being in our zones of genius, and who want to see how the opposite could be at least as true. I like that. And so this is really, my work is about going out and finding more playmates to come to hang out, just because it just feels good. Yeah, and then everybody else will do what they do. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, the team that I'm on at work, we spend a lot of time toggling back and forth between advocacy and inquiry. And I'm curious how you see those processes, or how would we look at those two processes and the toggling back and forth through the lens of conscious leadership?
Tell me more about those two. Describe those to me more.
Yeah, there are times when we make recommendations and advocate for recommendations in specific paths. And there are times when we just listen and sort of listen for what needs to be expressed, what wants to happen, and we ask questions around that and sort of follow that. So one is more of a process of recommending and sort of this. The other is more like this and asking. So I'm just curious.
Got it.
How
So
you might see
we
those
would
two
say those are
processes.
both, I would say those are both, wonderful skills to have, and that those skills can be done above the line and both could be done below the line. And so it's just always the question of, from where are we listening? From where are we advocating? So, because that's the content, right? That's what we're doing, but from where are we doing it is always the question first. And then if I know I'm listening, because I can do both of those. I know leaders who will listen, and we got to keep waiting for more data before we can make a decision. So we'll listen forever from below the line because there's this fear of, I don't want to screw it up. Or I can advocate because I'm right that this is the way, and I can advocate where I haven't been willing to question my own perspective in a way that causes people to then be a little bit opposing in a way because they don't hear my curiosity. So I think they're both wonderful, and they both can be done from either place. Yeah.
So Diana, I'm aware of your work at Genentech.
Yes.
And I wanted to know whether there were themes that you've experienced working in very technically focused companies, or, in terms of either receptivity to this approach, and if there's any contrast between kind of the IT tech versus biotech.
Right. So the question is, are there different ways we approach it when we go into different kinds of companies, right? And the answer is, there's not a lot of difference. We do it pretty much the same wherever we go. The only thing that we're doing is we're trying to use their metaphors or their language, their specific language or their examples of what might happen, and so they can relate to them. But
Have you noticed any differences to receptivity?
to receptivity. Yeah, I would say, that very intellectual, introverted, scientific mind can keep me on my toes. Because I can't say anything arguable, or they're going to dismiss me. So I've got to keep bringing the content to them from a place of unarguableness. That's one key thing. And secondly, from can't be any woo-woo in there, or any kind of, they
put on a play.
Yeah, they smell that a mile away. So honestly, I've been trained, and especially the younger they are, the more they are just ruthless and not letting me get away with anything. So I remember one time, leaving a team, going out into my car, and just putting my head on the steering wheel and bawling, just feeling like a complete failure because they had just slayed me with my arguability. I mean, it was, and they made me a better facilitator because of it. But they were just not going to tolerate anything that was, that they could hear that smelled of, jargon, dogma, whatever. So I've gotten pretty masterful now so that I don't have that happen very often. And I welcome it when it does because it just keeps me clean. Yeah. Oh, I would say one thing. We do a lot of experiential stuff. So some of it's a little bit edgy. Getting out on the drama triangle and being Jerry Springer for some people is not something they have any interest in doing. So I am mindful of that certain teams within an organization are going to be more or less receptive based on their personalities. So I do dial down or up exercises based on sort of the personalities of that team. Yeah. So I used to be more like, everybody going to do this no matter what. I was a lot insensitive actually about caring for those different people who have different styles of how they take in content. Yeah.
So the scientific and technical cultures that you were talking about, they can tend to be very evidence-driven.
Yes.
Show me the data.
Yes.
And how do you work with that?
I tell them, you try this on, you tell me your experience. That's your data. So I very much ask them, and the truth is we have a lot of science now that we can go to, and we do, and our book touches on some of it, but there's so much more. Even since this year, since the book came out, we have so much more scientific evidence to validate a lot of what we're working with. So we bring those things in there, and they see the science, and they validate that. But also, I'm just I myself am just I don't care what anybody says. I just want to have you try something on, tell me what you think. Did you like it? Would you think that might be something you'd want to use again? And that's how I get them to keep playing. Yeah. I always ask for lots of forgiveness in the beginning. I just say, can you just give me a break? Especially for those ones who I know are really going to take me to task. Can you just give me a break, and can you just play with this stuff for a little bit and then tell me what you think? Yeah.
Yeah, a little plug on the science question is in July, Marilyn Schlitz is going to be my guest. She was the chief scientist for Institute of Noetic Sciences and ultimately became their president for a few years. But she studied the realm of consciousness from a scientific perspective for at least 20 or 30 years. So she'll be here in July. Shameless plug over.
Good.
I'm wondering, what do you see as the places where you're interested in growing or honing your own practice of your process right now?
For me personally?
Yeah.
I want to get so clean about not being right about anything. I just want to keep doing my work. Diana, can you absolutely know that's true? Can you see how the opposite could be at least as true? And catch that everywhere so that my choices aren't coming from any righteous place. That's one place I'm always doing that work. And always looking at how I'm perceiving reality out there, and can I see it differently? Can I let go of believing the way I believe, or assuming somebody should be or not be a certain way? I'm constantly doing that work. The other thing is paying attention to where I myself am numbing out. What am I numbing my own self to? I'm starting to see even more places where I choose to not want to have to really feel or be with things the way they are. And so how all the little strategies I use and seeing can I put down that numbing practice and see what's underneath all of that and really have the courage to be with it.
This conscious leadership stuff is work. It is work.
Yeah.
It is a lifestyle, and it is a working lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's getting in shape spiritually, getting in shape consciously,
Yeah.
not just physically.
Yeah. Yeah. And to keep feeling. That's another big thing for me. And to feel my vulnerability. It's one of my big practices. I was just speaking to my mother the other day on the phone, and I was asking my parents to take a look at a big rift they've had for most of their marriage. And underneath it, I just stopped and I dropped in and I just let this little girl voice come forward who just said, I'm just so sad because I feel you guys and I feel your pain every time I'm around you. And I hurt. And I would rather not feel that hurt. And that was just it just felt so good just to be that unarguable, that underneath all of this, I just hurt when I'm with you and I see you both still struggling so much with your rift. And so when I can let myself be in that level of vulnerability, then I don't need you to be anything other than whatever you are, because I can just take responsibility for letting my hurt come through, and then I can be with you. And that's my practice, is to keep feeling, even to the world, like, can I just let my heart ache for the way, the places in the world that when I see them, my heart aches. Can I just let myself have that? And it's courageous work for me. Yeah. So one of my spiritual practices, I have a good cry almost every morning. I go find a little video or a piece of music or something just to let my tears flow, just to feel. Yeah, I love tears now. Liquid love, I call it.
Liquid love, yeah.
Hi. Earlier, you were talking about being allies and not competitors. But if in a team there are people who wants to compete with each other,
yes,
how do you shift it to be all allies instead of competitors?
How do we shift it if we've been competing with one another?
Yeah.
Well, it's a first question of willingness. Like, would I be willing, right, to be an ally? And let's surface any place that's not willing, and let's explore that and see what's the value of not being willing, and what do we get to learn in here, and what are the feelings that might be here. There's often an experience that people need to have, typically some kind of an energetic experience that needs to complete itself, and so that I could shift above the line. And so we often look at that. But the first question is, would I be willing? It's the same thing like, would I be willing to lose weight? Because once you get willing, weight starts coming off. So once I get willing, we can start being allies pretty quickly. So the question is really comes down to check and see if I'm willing. And it's a different thing than my head might say yes. But I have to ask. I always say to my clients, ask every cell in the body. Imagine every cell gets to vote. Is every cell willing to be allies? And sometimes what people find is they go, yes, 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 no. Oh, what's in here? Let's go find out what that's about. And we go find that there's something in here, and we play with it, work with it, explore it, and see if there's a willingness that wants to shift or not.
Yeah, and every cell is a lot of cells.
It's a lot of cells.
Like 40 trillion cells in a human
Yeah,
body.
and very few of us, I don't know about you guys, but I didn't get trained to listen to the whole self. I got trained to listen to this. Yeah. And, it's conscious. That's one of the great payoffs of conscious leadership is I get access to IQ, EQ, emotional intelligence, and BQ, body intelligence, which I think is like the bomb. And you're going to be hearing a lot more about BQ in the next many years. And so when I can be present, I have full access to these three centers. These three centers can talk to each other, and I can make very brilliant decisions from when all three are activated. And that's a big, a big gift to have. And if you are, in a company with another company of the same product, I would argue that those who can have access to those three centers as they develop their company are going to have the advantage. Yeah.
One of the things that I've always liked about you is your vitality. You're really, really vital. And are you consistently vital all the time? Would your husband agree with that?
Yes.
Yes? Okay.
Yeah, I am. I am consistently vital.
It's a blessing.
It is a
really
blessing. I know. I've actually said, they should check up. You can donate my brain, see what was going on in there. Because I think I practice my vitality, but I'm also just naturally vivacious. So it comes.
And a sense of humor. I remember doing a one-day workshop with you down. In fact, that was at Hope Labs.
Yeah.
I just realized that was Hope Labs. And I forget what set it up, but you just turned upside down on your chair. You've done that before, I think.
Yes.
It didn't look like it was the first time you'd ever done it. But just all of a sudden, we're looking at Diane upside down in this chair. And have you ever seen anybody upside down in a chair in a circle? Just a very odd feeling.
Can she demonstrate?
No, she's got a skirt on today. I don't think that would be good. So I think with that, I want to thank you for being my guest this month. And thank you all for
It's my
attending.
great
I'll let
pleasure.
Tom wrap it up.
Thank
We're going
you.
to stick around. We got time to stick around, so we'll be around for a while to talk to people.
Wonderful. And thank you all for coming and exploring, and so grateful to see all of you.
Thank you, Diana. Thank you, John. Appreciate you all being here this evening. I'd like to once again thank the folks at the Gladstone Institutes for hosting us this evening. And there are several folks around, I forgot to mention at the beginning, but there are a number of people here who are affiliated or part of FutureShapers. If you have any questions about our roundtables and the work that we're doing at FutureShapers, for those of you who registered for this evening, you will have noticed that we've got a number of folks already committed to being with us throughout this year. So I would encourage you to come back again next month and the subsequent months and invite your friends and let others know about these events and what we're up to. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren.
Yeah.